Hello and welcome to Meaningless Culture Drop on Platform Radio, providing the culture that means nothing to you but everything to us. I'm your host, Daniel Edwards, and we have another jam-packed show with some brilliant content ready for you. First off, we have a film review of Christopher Nolan's latest blockbuster war epic, Dunkirk, followed closely by a review of Haim's new album, Something to Tell You. Also, we have a theatre review of Many Man, the latest production from Spilt Milk Theatre for the Cardiff Fringe Festival. The WOM's article series also continues with my review of Gwyn Thomas's classic, The Dark Philosophers. And finally, instead of my usual weekly turd dumping on politicians, I thought it would be more interesting to discuss the latest news of Jodie Whittaker's casting as the next Doctor Who. All this and more coming up in the next hour and a half. But first, some music. Here's Stephen Wilson with Postcard.
It's time that I got off the kitchen floor. But is there really any point at all? Waking up this morning felt the same. I better sleep while life is so mundane. The windows up so I can't be sure. Now I haven't even got the will to eat. I'm lame and self-obsessed, that I will concede. To light a cigarette, but I cannot. The light is dead and the gas has been cut off. I'm the one you seem to read about. The fire inside my eyes has long gone out. There's nothing left for me to say or do. 'Cause all that matters disappeared when I lost you. They say it's insane when you think somebody's gonna change when they won't. I'm getting tired of this recital. Is it really worth fighting for? Young lovers seem carefree, but these bags have gotten heavy again. I think it's time to break the pattern. Blame it on return of Saturn. A lonely road to nowhere, that's all we are. I wish I never met you. You've done me so wrong. I wish I could forget you. It's been way too long. It's been 16 hours and 3 long years. Been trying to wipe these memories and dry these tears. I wish I never met you. That's how much I regret you. Contempt is in silence. You offer no violence to me. You have me feeling like a crackhead. I squeeze you out just like a blackhead. Nobody's gonna save you, and I know better than to blame you alone. I lay there and take the lashes, but now I'll leave you with the ashes. A lonely road to nowhere, that's all we are. I wish I never met you. You've done me so wrong. I wish I could forget you. It's been way too long. It's been 16 hours and 3 long years. Been trying to wipe these memories and dry these tears. I wish I'd never met you. That's how much I regret you. And now the flame's just a flicker down to the wick. Now tell me who's gonna kill it. It burns until you snub it out. I wanna rub you out, but love's gonna trick you. Fuck with your ticker, take you down like a brick that's tied to you, pulling you down. Watch me drown. It's been 16 hours and 3 long years. Been trying to wipe these memories and dry these tears. I wish I never met you. That's how much I regret you. That's how much I regret you. I wish I never met you. That's how much I regret you.
Was Sam Sparrow there with I Wish I Never Met You. Before that we had Stephen Wilson with Postcard. Great songs, really do love them. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that when people write up film history, they're going to look at Christopher Nolan and they're going to say, here is one of the best directors Britain has ever produced. And I'm not saying that because I'm a big, huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy, or because I think that Memento and Inception and Interstellar are, the best things since sliced bread. I'm saying this because last night I saw his latest offering, Dunkirk. And this is a war movie that depicts the evacuation of Dunkirk during the Second World War from 3 different perspectives. The idea is he's written the film so that it shows the soldier's story from both the land, the sea, and the air. And in this case, you see a week of what it was like on the land for the men on the beach itself. You get a day of what it was like for the people who were in the boats, sailing across the channel to get them off the beach. And you get an hour in the air with the RAF pilots who are doing their best to sort of keep the Luftwaffe from blowing the whole of Dunkirk harbour into oblivion. But what is really remarkable about the film is that it's totally focused on the story of the fighting men. You'll have no scenes here with Churchill and his generals, sitting in a bunker somewhere and making big proud speeches. Instead, you get the gruesome horror of war and what it was like for these young men. I mean, you see these guys being thrown into terrible situations, these young squaddies, and most of them are played by relative newcomers. We have Fionn Whitehead, Harry Styles, most notably, and a Welsh actor who I'm quite fond of called Aneurin Barnard, who's been in various things over the last couple of years, namely The White Queen and 13, starring Jodie Whittaker on BBC Three. And these boys, they get put through hell, almost literally. They get put through torpedo attacks, dive bombers, oil spills and water, and are nearly drowned on at least 3 different occasions. And it really is a harrowing experience just sitting and watching the thing. But it's not all, doom and gloom in this film, depicting, gruesome war and how terrible war is. There are some emotionally beautiful moments, and I think for me the high point of the film comes, I think about 2/3 of the way through. We're on the Mole, which is the only working Yeti that was in Dunkirk harbour, being used to sort of ferry men onto the bigger ships. And in this particular scene, we have Kenneth Branagh, who's playing some sort of rear admiral, standing on the Mole, and he's looking out across the horizon, and then he picks up a pair of binoculars, he looks out, and one of the army officers next to him asks him, "What can you see?" And he says, "Home." And it's then that you see all the little ships of Dunkirk, as they're now called, coming over the horizon and being met with jubilant cheers by the blokes on the ships, on the beach. And it's a moment that left me in tears pretty much, because it fills you with such a sense of pride because you realize this is not some fanciful little idea that someone's cooked up. This really did happen. These people just jumped into boats, went across the channel, and got as many guys off the beach as they could. And it was our finest hour during our darkest hours, Churchill might have put it. And the film is a powerhouse, really. But one of the highlights of the film is, of course, its cast. I mean, you do have the newcomers in, but you also have some of Christopher Nolan's sort of recurring favourites. Tom Hardy plays an RAF pilot who's up in the air. Cillian Murphy makes an appearance as a shell-shocked soldier who Mark Rylance's flotilla pull off a wrecked cargo ship. And of course, we have Kenneth Branagh and a host of other people. And it really is a brilliant film. And surprisingly enough, it's just under 2 hours. I mean, you might have expected, if you know Christopher Nolan's work, you might have expected to come into the theatre and be sat there for the next 2.5 hours, possibly 3 hours. But no, this is actually his shortest film. I think it comes in at something like an hour and 50 minutes or something like that. So a brilliant film, and I think without doubt, when people look back, they'll say it was his best film, because afterward, apparently it has been 25 years in the making, and you can tell where all that time went. You can tell now, you realise that all these fabulous films that Christopher Nolan has done beforehand, Inception, The Dark Knight trilogy, Memento, these have all just been a dress rehearsal. This was him getting ready for his masterpiece, which is Dunkirk, and I do highly recommend that you go see it in the cinema and enjoy yourself thoroughly. I'll also be doing a review of this on the Sprout, so if you want to catch that on the Sprout website, that'll be up sometime in the next week, possibly Monday or Tuesday. We're going to continue now with some more music, and as I'm often very fond of saying, this is Radio Platform, and we are of course always proud to have new local artists send us tracks so that we can play them and showcase them and say, hey, this is what's available, and keep an eye out. The next track that we have is by an artist who I've met and known from major music, called Carrie Ann Rogers. And this song of hers, Ghosts, was on the Major Music album that they put together. I think it was in 2013. And for someone who also had 2 tracks on the album himself, I have to admit that this was by far the best. And this is the radio edit version that we put together as a sort of hidden track at the end of the album. So here we are. This is Carrie Ann Rogers with Ghosts.
Step out onto the sea, footprints following me everywhere I stand, somewhere deep within. Whispered a long goodbye as you got onto a plane, never to turn your back again. But all I know is every tear I cry, it falls from clouds raining from the sky. It's all about the way I sleep tonight. I toss and turn to feel you holding tight. Every time you fall down to earth, gonna pick you back up on your feet. Stumble over, walking outside, stop and breathe. Kicking up the leaves on a cold winter day, see the memories fade away. Something's haunting me, ghosts are following me. Everywhere I look, all I seem to see is emptiness crawl beneath my feet. No, you don't lie here, watched you disappear. Say goodbye one last time to a fallen hero. And every time you fall down to earth, gonna pick you back up on your feet. Stumble over, walking outside, stop and breathe. Kicking up the leaves on a cold winter day, see the memories fade away. Something's haunting me, ghosts are following me. On a cold December, rain turns to snow. Sit over my head, wash it over my head. 'Cause I'm too weak to fly. And every time you fall down to earth, gonna pick you back up on your feet. Stumble over, walking outside, stop and breathe. Yeah, yeah. Every time you fall down to earth, gonna pick you back up on your feet. Stumble over, walking outside, stop and breathe. Picking up the leaves on a cold winter day, see the memories fade away. Something's haunting me, ghosts are following me.
That was lovely. That was Carrie Ann Rogers there with Ghosts, the radio edit. We called the radio edit because there are 2 versions of the track. One's a lot more sparser, it's just her voice and the guitar and the multi-track. But that was the the radio version. We got pop beat drums on there and everything else. Now I have to say, so far it's been an absolutely marvellous year in terms of film, music and theatre. There have been a lot of sort of, I suppose you'd say, sequels. There have been Trainspotting 2, War of the Planet of the Apes is coming out this year, and for music as well, people have been releasing second albums galore, and I'm happy to say that this year Haim are back with a new album. I've been a fan of Haim ever since I first saw them on, I believe it was Jules Holland, about 5 years ago, and they've been doing their sort of 80s synth pop sound for the last 5 years, and they've brought it back now on their second album, Something to Tell You. Only this time it's a much more layered record, I suppose. Like I said, it's a sophomore effort. It's been 3 years in the making, and whereas their first album, when you think back, it was rather sparse in its sound. I mean, it did have appropriate amount of synthesizers, but it was mostly very much sort of power chord rock, loud guitars, and predominantly single vocals, except for on a couple of songs like the title track Days Are Gone and The Wire. But like I said, their second album is much more layered. They have retained the synthesizers, but they're pushed back slightly on the mix this time around, and they've made way for things like acoustic guitars on Want You Back. We have string quartets on another of their tracks, Found It in Silence, and surprisingly trumpets and horns on another one of their singles, Little of Your Love, which I think I played on the previous show. And it's a very rich texture on this album, and it's allowed the Haim sisters to sort of blend with all these sounds, but to still retain their sort of power chord hard rock rhythms, especially on my favorite song of the album, Right Now, which I'll be playing for you later in a sec. But it's their vocal harmonies that have truly developed on this album. You can tell that when artists go away for a number of years, it's because they're cooking something up. And it's quite obvious on this album that Haim's new powerhouse is in their vocal harmonies. They've put more work into it. Because on the first album, it is mostly Danielle Haim, who's the lead guitarist. She takes the driver's seat in terms of most of the lead vocals on the first album. But on the second album here, there's more alternating between their voices, between all three of them. And there's a lot more of all three of them singing together in harmony, which is a very Queen-sounding thing, and something I think that also goes back to their influences with Fleetwood Mac, because they're quite obviously Fleetwood Mac fans. I mean, they sound very much like the sort of Christine McVie type songs that you get Everywhere You Go, and I suppose you say Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow as well. Now, lyrically speaking, the album, I mean, it's not going to set the world on fire. It's you wouldn't expect Haim to come out with lyrics like Roger Waters, attacking Trump and all this stuff. But they cover the sort of abstract themes of love and teenage angst and unrequited love, quite a lot of it. And that's a lyrical trend that other reviewers have tended to sort of look down upon. But I embrace it. I mean, it's fanciful. I love it. I mean, after all, entertainment is escapism. And it is a very pleasant thing just to sit down every now and then and listen to an album like Something to Tell You that is so annoyingly catchy that you can't resist, the urge to sing along. But on this album, whilst the pop influences are more prevalent, Haim still manages to rock out quite nicely, and their detractors will no doubt acknowledge this when these songs are performed live, because this has always been Haim's strength, is their live performances. And they bring the songs to life as they always do. Unfortunately, we don't have any live recordings of Haim yet. I mean, there are plenty out there on the internet, but there are none that I'm looking to put on. There's one version of Right Now that I would have liked to have played from Jules Holland, but that I can't find that on the internet anywhere. So I'm just going to play you the single version of Right Now. Here it is.
Gave you my love, you gave me nothing. Said what I gave wasn't enough. You had me feeling I was foolish forever, thinking this could be the one. I wasn't even in the running, already had your mind made up. You left me searching for a reason. Why'd you leave? Left me in the dust. And now you're saying that you need me, babe. Right now, right now. And now you're saying that you need me, babe. Right now, right now. And now you're saying that you love me, babe. Right now, right now. And now you're saying that you need me, saying that you need me, saying that you need me. Right now. Gave you my love, thought I could trust you. You let me down at every turn. You had me hanging on a dream you never believed. You gave me a word. Finally on the other side, and I could see for miles, and I've forgotten every line. Now you're saying that you need me, babe. Right now, right now. And now you're saying that you saying that you need me, saying that you need me, saying that you need me right now. Did you think this would be easy? Thought this would be easy. Not now, not now. I know you heard me through an open window. Whispers can't read to your ear. Whispers sounded so clear. So now it's so clear now. Somehow it's so clear now. What's that sound? That's you fading away. Now you're saying that you need me, babe. Right now, right now. Now you're saying that you need me, babe. Right now, right now. Now you're saying that you love me, baby. Right now, right now. And now you're saying that you need me, saying that you need me, saying that you need me. And now you're saying that you need me, babe. Now you're saying that you need me, babe. Now you're saying that you love me, baby. Now you're saying that you need me, saying that you need me, saying that you need me.
Not everyone in New York with Pacey and Lloyd Webber. May his trousers fall down as he bows to the Queen and the Crown. I don't know what tune that the orchestra played, but it went by me, sickly, sentimental. Can I have another piece of chocolate cake? Tammy Baker's got a lot on her plate. Can I buy another cheap Picasso fade? Andy Warhol must be laughing in his grave. The band of the night takes you to ethereal heights over dinner. And you wander the streets, never reaching the heights that you seek. And the sugar that dripped from the violins both made the children go crazy through a hole in the tooth of a hag. Can I have another piece of chocolate cake? Tammy Baker must be losing her faith. Yeah. Can I buy another cheap Picasso fade? Andy Warhol must be laughing in his grave. Dogs are on the road, we're all tempting fate. Cars are shooting by with no number plates. Here comes Mrs. Harry Legs. I saw Elvis Presley walk out of a 7-Eleven. That's right. And a woman gave birth to a baby and then bowled to 57. Now the excess of fat on your American bones will cushion the impact as you sink like a stone. Can I have another piece of chocolate cake? Tammy Baker, Tammy Baker.
Crowded House there, with one of my favourite songs, Chocolate Cake. It was a song that got them in a lot of trouble in America. I mean, Crowded House, they were a band, I believe they're from Australia, or it could be New Zealand, I'm not quite sure. The band that my dad really likes, and yeah, they were very big in America during the late 80s, and had quite a few hits. But then they did that song, Chocolate Cake, which was a sort of satire on American consumerism. And it bombed. It bombed in America. I suppose it's never wise to insult your mainstream audience. It's a lesson we should all learn, I think. But anyway, this week I was in Cardiff for the Sprout, and it was on Wednesday that I went to the Big Top, which is a club just above, I believe it's called 10 Feet Tall. And the Big Top is just above it, like I said, and you go through 10 Feet Tall, up through the stairs, and you come out, and the Big Top is like a little sort of, I think it's like 2 rooms and a toilet, just above this club. And it was a wonderful space, and it was here that Spilt Milk Theatre Group were putting on their production of Many Man for the Cardiff Fringe Festival. This has been going on for the last few days now, and I think it's about to come to a close. And there have been a wonderful host of different one-man theatre acts, or should I say one-person theatre acts, because a lot of them have been with female actors as well. And the performance that I saw on Wednesday was Many Man. Like I said, it's a one-man play, written and performed by a great actor called Tobias Weatherburn. And he proves himself quite an emotional powerhouse, particularly with his accents. He plays an unnamed, very unreliable narrator who appears at the start of the play as himself. But it is very quickly established that he is an unstable, compulsive liar who jumps in and out of his many different personalities. Personalities that he has, of course, invented to make up for the crippling inadequacies that he perceives in his own boring lifestyle. But of course, each personality is vastly different from the other. There's the confident, suave American, there's the garrulous and arrogant Scotsman, and then of course there's also the unassuming, book-mad Welshman. And thankfully, Weatherman can handle his accents with wonderful gusto and perfect tone as well. I mean, you're always afraid if you hear a Scottish accent, it's going to slip into Irish, or if you hear an American accent, it's going to be the standard sort of twist your mouth to one side and then sort of talk out the side of your mouth like that and all this stuff. But of course, the Welshman, you were afraid he's going to become too sing-song and is going to fall into an Indian accent, but no. And of course, with each of these accents, there is a different personality in the way that the narrator lives his life. But of course, he soon discovers that since he is living a lie, he cannot lead a real life, for fear that anyone he becomes close to will discover the lie and will leave him, and he very soon slips into an unstable, almost schizophrenic state where he yearns to be real again. Only his multiple personalities have now become so numerous that there is virtually nothing left of the original man. And of course, there's a constant refrain every time he slips in and out of one of his personalities. An audio clip plays over the speakers saying, "I am me, I was born me." And of course, the tagline of the play, as I've written down here, it says, "Just be yourself," they say. How can you be yourself when you don't know who you are? How can you be yourself when there's more than one of you? How can you be yourself? This was, I have to say, a highlight of this year's Fringe Festival, and highly enjoyable. We're going to continue now with some more music, and we've got Plan B's new single, In the Name of Man. We're very happy to hear him back again. He has, of course, announced, don't know the name of the album yet, but he has, of course, announced that there will not be as much, in fact, there will be pretty much no hip-hop on the record. It's going to be mostly him singing again, which I'm very glad to hear. He has got a very remarkable voice. And so here it is, his new single, In the Name of Man.
Hey man, what's the
Everything you touch, you kill. All the soap in the world won't wash away. All the blood that's on your hands is it to steal. Hey man, what's the use? There's no talking to you when you think it's God's words that you preach. From a book someone wrote that you read. Hey man, what are you up to then? What's your game? What's going on? Something's wrong. Hey man, what are you up to? Hey man, you're the only one to blame. There's blood on your hands, something's wrong. Hey man, what are you up to? Have you even got a plan? Or have you just lost your way and are too afraid to say everything you killed was in the name of man? Hey man, what's on your mind? Now that all your crimes have been erased by time, and all the land you say you want is what you stole, and all the people that you buried there are born. Hey man, what are you up to then? What's your game? What's going on? Something's wrong. Hey man, what are you up to? Hey man, you're the only one to blame. There's been blood on your hands for too long. Hey man, what are you up to? Or have you just lost your way and are too afraid to say everything you killed was in the name of man? What's the war? We know the wars that you start, you never win. Everything you love, you hurt. You saw that you make fall apart, don't change a thing. Hey man, what's going on? Something's wrong. Hey man, what are you up to? Keep on killing it. Hey man, you're the only one to blame. There's been blood on your hands for too long. Hey man, how can we trust you? Everything you killed was in. 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 Everything you
Brilliant song. Brilliant artist. I do like Plan B, and it's nice to hear new music from him after such a long period of time. We haven't heard anything from him since 2012 with Ill Manners. And that was, of course, was a brilliant album in itself as well, and a very good film. It's worth watching, but be warned, it is not for the faint-hearted. Anyway, so when I was in college in Cardiff, this was about 4 or 5 years ago now, I used to spend my lunchtimes in the library in the Parade building, and I would go through the bookshelves looking for something to read. And one of the books that I found there one day was from the Library of Wales series. This is a series of books published by Parthian Books that are out-of-print classics by English-speaking Welsh literature. And the book that I stumbled upon here was called The Dark Philosophers by a writer called Gwyn Thomas. And it was a wonderful book, it was. It was black, with a black and white photograph on the front of it, with white lettering. And the black and white photograph was a picture of Archie Lush, who was a political friend and advisor to Aneurin Bevan, with a couple of his mates sat in what looks like an Italian cafe somewhere in the Rhondda Valley. And I looked at the book and I picked it up and I looked at the back and immediately it said sex, death and devastating black humor. These are the three themes that hold together the three stories. And the idea is the book itself is 3 novellas in one book, a collection by this writer Gwyn Thomas. Gwyn Thomas was a writer from Cwmaporth in the Rhondda, and he was many things. He was a humorist, he was a raconteur, he was a novelist, and he was a radio personality, immensely popular. Elaine Morgan, who was a writer for the BBC during the 70s, once described him as the Billy Connolly of his age because he had a wonderful quality of being able to make everyone around him burst into laughter at the mention of one of his stories. This is a man who was born the last of 12 children. He grew up in terrible poverty. He once described the atmosphere in his family kitchen, saying, and I quote, "Our kitchen was a bilingual bomb of a place. We would have gossip in English, politics in Welsh, and downright lies in both." And that just gives you an idea of the man. He was very garrulous, and his writing, especially during his early years, was very, very political, was very socialist in outlook. And in this case, I've chosen The Dark Philosophers because it is, I think, his best book and his best writing. And like I said, it is a book that has 3 novellas in it. In this case, they're called Oscar, The Dark Philosophers, and Simeon. Now, each novella describes life in some unnamed valley in Wales during the Depression. Now, this is a world in which men made idle by the state-imposed unemployment of the 1930s while away their time in the libraries and the institutes of their day in an effort to try and keep the cold out and also to try and better themselves through knowledge. And while each novella is undoubtedly set in the same valley, they are not tied together by plots or characters, but by 3 unifying themes, which are put on the back of the book blurb: sex, death, and black humor. These are the 3 things that are very prevalent throughout all 3 novellas. Now, some people might think this is very whimsical. Why have you chosen an unknown cult writer from the 1940s? But believe me, these stories are just as relevant to the culture of South Wales today as Marvin Gaye's What's Going On album is to black culture in the United States. Each story has at its center a first-person narrator, and this first-person narrator goes on to describe a dominant, powerful figure in their part of the valley. Now, this figure is usually someone who has taken power that they have amassed and have allowed themselves to be corrupted by it. Now, these figures are the titular characters of the novellas Oscar and Simeon, and the Reverend Emmanuel Priest in The Dark Philosophers. In the case of each of these men, they have abused their power. Oscar, it is his ill-gotten wealth and the power that it brings him. With Emmanuel, it is the abuse of his position in the community as a man of influence. And finally, and most tragically of all, with Simeon, it is his abuse of his familial power, which has developed into an incestuous love for his daughters. In each case, the first-person narrator, Lewis in Oscar, Benny in Simeon, and the titular Dark Philosophers have witnessed these abuses firsthand, and they are finally spurned into action, leading to the eventual destruction of these oppressive figures in their lives. The stories can be summed up by this wonderful little extract that I found in the main story, The Dark Philosophers. The Dark Philosophers are 4 guys: Walter, Ben, Arthur, and John. Walter is the sort of leader and the most knowledgeable of all 4 of them. And halfway through the novel, they are explaining to a young man called Willie, whom they have befriended, why they refuse to banish the hatred that they feel in their hearts for the betrayal they suffered at the hands of the Reverend Emmanuel Priest, who was turned from being a socialist firebrand to a stooge for capitalist landowners and so on and so forth. And he states here in this wonderful monologue, "You cannot forget things that have been your entire life for many years. The insult of a moment, Willie, is hard enough to forget, but when men have to endure the insult of being idle, degraded and useless for years on end, not only is it impossible to forget that, it becomes an act of faith to cherish the memory of it every moment one lives. Because one's duty as a human being from that time on is to fight against the possibility of that insult being leveled against oneself or against others again. You're young, Willie. You only caught a glimpse of the knife that went through our bodies." And that's a very good example of the kind of writing that Thomas got up to in these novellas. One story that I like about these novellas is that Thomas would write them up. He would then have them typed up by his wife, who was the only person who could understand his shorthand scribble. And she would then send each story off to a different publisher. And in this case, each of them accepted, which of course you couldn't get away with nowadays. Most publishing houses demand that you be exclusive to them and them alone. And of course this is something that got Thomas in trouble later on. But The Dark Philosophers, Oscar and Simeon, they are his best writing, along with a sequel that he did to The Dark Philosophers called The Alone to the Alone. He started to gain a cult status in America, Thomas, but then he released a book called All Things Betray Thee. And this was it was disastrous to his career for 2 reasons. One, it was a very different book to his other books. In this case, it was a novel set in the 18th century during the Industrial Revolution that's set in a fictionalized Merthyr Tydfil called Moon Lear and focuses on a revolt similar to that of the Merthyr Rising. Now, this was quite set apart from his previous sort of near-contemporary black humorous novels from the 1930s and 40s. And there was also the fact that this was quite obviously a socialist book, and it was around about the time that this was published in 1948 that the House of Un-American Activities, a very offensive body of history, started labeling socialists and fellow travelers as traitors, as communist sympathizers and spies, and as such, Thomas's work suffered, and he never picked up the same cult status in America ever again. A sad ending to that career, but he went on for many years until his death in 1981, and he wrote many more novels, wrote some very good plays, and kept us all laughing with his dry black humor. We're going to continue now with more music. This is Roger Daltrey with McVicar.
coming. Hey, baby, won't you let me come and kiss you all night long? All night long. Don't worry, I won't tell nobody that you are the one until dawn. I'm nothing like the vision you once formed. So far from perfect, this you can ignore. My wisdom's flown, my sense is gone. So take my voice, what's left of me. A flower, a fallen sea. I'm the first, but not the last, 'cause I know it's coming. Hey, baby, won't you let me come and kiss you all night long? All night long. But don't worry, I won't tell nobody that you are the one until dawn. Wasn't looking for a safe haven, I wanted fire within. Oh, how we fought, never gave in. Now when you're looking at me, I swore I'd never fall. It does no good at all. Hey, baby, won't you let me come and kiss you all night long? All night long. But don't worry, I won't tell nobody that you are the one until dawn. Hey, baby, won't you let me come and kiss you all night long? All night long. But don't worry, I won't tell nobody that you are the one until dawn.
Lucy Rose there with No Good at All. I like that song. I also like Lucy Rose. She's a very good artist. I first caught a glimpse of her on the Manic Street Preachers album, Rewind the Film. She was doing a co-lead vocal on the opening track, This Southern Welsh Harp. It was a very nice song and a very nice album overall. But anyway, let's move on. It was only last week that we were introduced to the fact that Jodie Whittaker shall be the next thespian to play Doctor Who. The actress most famous for her appearances in Black Mirror and her starring role in Broadchurch shall be taking over from Peter Capaldi at the end of 2017. The announcement came at the end of the Wimbledon final, and since then it has sent shockwaves throughout the Doctor Who and sci-fi worlds, and whilst the majority of Doctor Who fans have taken the news well, there have been those who are, I have to say, somewhat displeased at this turn of events. But before we get into the arguments of it, a little history on the matter first. The idea of a female doctor has been floating around Doctor Who for many years, long before Stephen Moffat became the showrunner in 2010. The first hint of the idea came during the 1980s when the show was under the aegis of a man called John Nathan Turner, or JNT as he was referred to. In particular, there was a quote made by Colin Baker when he left the show in 86 when he said, "I wish my successor, whoever he or she might be, the best of luck." Now, many people have said that the Baker was just jesting at this point because he was feeling rather sore from having been fired from the show after just under 2 years in the job. But JNT decided to run with this anyway to provoke sort of media interest with the press. In the same year also, the original show, I wouldn't say runner, but the man who came up with the idea for Doctor Who, Sidney Newman, recommended a female doctor to the then BBC chairman Michael Grade. He later wrote, "At a later stage, Doctor Who should be metamorphosed into a woman, but they should be sure to avoid a flashy Hollywood Wonder Woman because this kind of heroine with no flaws is a bore." The idea was later sort of played upon in a comic relief special that Stephen Moffat wrote back in 1999 called The Curse of Fatal Death. In this story, the Doctor confronts the Master and the Daleks and is humorously shot and killed in various ways and has to regenerate a number of times, till eventually, strangely enough, when you get to number 13, he becomes Joanna Lumley. But it wasn't until recent years that there was serious talk made of turning the Doctor into a woman, and this was sort of set up in various little snippets of dialogue. You get in The Night of the Doctor, which was the 5-minute sketch that Paul McGann did for the 50th anniversary, when he said, you can regenerate into anyone, fat or thin, man or woman, etc., etc. This was played upon again in the series 8 finale, when it turns out that the Doctor's nemesis, the Master, had regenerated into a woman, Missy, played by Michelle Gomez. But for me, the most shocking and revelatory idea of this came in the series 9 finale, when the Doctor shoots a Time Lord General, played by, I think he was called Ken Bones, who was an old white man, and when he's shot, he regenerates into a young black woman, which also sort of took away arguments that the Doctor could only be white as well at the same time, I suppose. But the best line explaining it all came in the recent series finale, The Doctor Falls. Peter Capaldi's Doctor, when queried by his companion on the fluidity of gender within the Time Lord community, replies, "We're the most civilized civilization in the universe. We're billions of years beyond your petty human obsession with gender and its associated stereotypes." Now, the reaction from some of the former actors has been varied. We've had David Tennant, one of Whittaker's co-stars from Broadchurch, tweeting, "Doctor Who, another show with a strong female lead," something that he later said he was obviously pleased about. But on the other hand, we've had Peter Davison, who was the actor who played Doctor Who between 82 and 84, going on record as saying that he disapproved of the move, stating, "I speak now as a fan who grew up watching the show. I have trouble with the idea of a female Doctor, only because I reckon if you're born on Gallifrey a man, you're probably a male Time Lord. It seems to me if you reverse that, if you have an uncertain, fallible female Doctor with a really strong male companion, you've got more of a stereotype than anything else." That's kind of an opinion, but I don't take it as a valid one. Now, as to my opinion on the matter, I won't go into all the details of what the fans have been saying, because that's like opening the Covenant of the Ark and watching your face melt. No, but my opinion as to the matter, well, I have to admit, when I first heard the announcement, I was a little put off by the idea. But I was very quick to drop my concerns when I realized they were based solely on the fact that Jodie Whittaker was a woman. But I also have to accept the fact that this is one of the reasons why the showrunners came up with the idea of renewal, or regeneration as they later referred to it. It was so that once every few years, the show could be completely revamped, a new dynamic, new cast, new ideas. And in this day and age, I think of fake news, the rising concerns about feminism, the gender pay gap, and so on, I think it's only right that our young audiences of the day should have a strong female figure to look up to and to aspire to. I think that more important than any male macho machismo that you get when they say that the Doctor should always be a man. That's my 2 cents on the matter. We're going to finish now with a song by Linkin Park, because it was on Thursday night that we learnt of the very sad and terrible news that Chester Bennington, the lead singer of Linkin Park, had hung himself. This came just 2 months after Chris Cornell's hanging by suicide also, something that obviously deeply affected Bennington as well. And he will be sorely missed, I think. He was an exceptional singer, an exceptional artist. And so now here it is, Linkin Park with In the End.
It starts with
One thing, I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time. All I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. The clock takes life away. It's so unreal. Didn't look out below. Watch the time go right out the window. Trying to hold on to didn't even know I wasted it all just to watch you go. I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to be will eventually be a memory of a time I tried so
design this rhyme to remind myself how I tried so hard. In spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, remembering all the times you fought with me, I'm surprised it got so. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore. Not that you knew me back then, but it all comes back to me in the end. You kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard
and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I put my trust in you, pushed as far as I can go.